This is Speaking of Pets podcast, where we give you up-to-date, accurate, science-based information when making decisions about your pet's health.
From experts in dermatology like my sister, surgery, internal medicine, CBD use in pets, the pet food industry, you name it. If it affects pets, we'll talk about it.
Today's Speaking of Pets podcast is sponsored by Blue Buffalo, the maker of natural pet foods. Love them like family, feed them like family. Blue Buffalo offers wholesome, meat-first recipes with high-quality natural ingredients in flavors dogs and cats love. Discover formulas for all breed sizes, life stages, and lifestyles. And with Blue Buffalo's True Blue Promise, that assures that real meat is the first ingredient, with no poultry byproducts, no corn, wheat, or soy, and no artificial flavors or preservatives. Hey everybody, welcome to Speaking of Pets. I'm Dr. Alice Novotny-Jeroman, a board-certified veterinary allergist and dermatologist, and
I'm Janet Novotny-King. I am not a board-certified allergist and dermatologist. I am Dr. Jeroman's sister, your average pet owner and lover.
Well, I notice you are wearing all of your Buckeye gear.
All my regalia.
Yes, and even the Buckeye Christmas tree. Yep. And the reason is we have a very special guest, Dr. Rustin Moore. Rusty is the current dean of the Ohio State University College of Veterinary Medicine and a classmate of mine, and I'm proud to call him my friend. He went to undergrad at West Virginia University, has been our dean since 2015. He is a fabulous pet dad to Travis, Teddy, and Tucker, and Janet, this I'm sure will really impress you. He, I'm sure, knows Brutus Buckeye.
Oh, the one and only.
Yes.
Well, there's actually three.
Oh, the secret is out.
That's a Buckeye secret.
I wondered how they could be. Janet went to the some sort of band, OSU band, marching band function in Manhattan, and Broody was there, but he was also supposed to be in Columbus that same day.
He was
magical
great.
Magical powers.
He was great. And the whole band was there. It was really cool. There was a sea of scarlet and gray in Manhattan.
Anyway, Rusty, I was looking up some interesting facts on the 2027 class. And I saw that 86% are female and 15 or 13% are male. But wasn't our class of 89 the first one that was 51% women, right?
I think our class was actually a little more, a little higher percent women than that. But we were in that range in the 80s where the demographics of veterinary medicine started changing.
And why do you think that is? I mean, I've heard several things like, some of the guys are going into human medicine instead of veterinary medicine. I really can't come up with a reason why it's so overwhelmingly female now.
There actually been some studies on this. Sort of, it's called the feminization of the profession, and I don't know that we really know what those are. I mean, I have heard some of the same ones, like part of the reason is that perhaps men are going toward professions that perhaps have a better return on investment in terms of pay.
Right.
But, I don't want to say that that's really the real reason or the only reason. I think it's actually, if we look at higher education, a higher percentage of women are now going into higher ed in general than men. So I think there's probably some cultural shifts and things that tend to happen. And we're not the only one where we're seeing that. So, medicine and other places are maybe not to the extent we are, but certainly following similar trends.
How many vet schools are there in the United States?
There are currently 33. And there will be another one that will be coming online this fall with its first class, Rowan University in New Jersey. And there's about 11 or 12 that are seeking to start veterinary schools. Some have already been publicly announced, like Clemson University and Arkansas State and several others, but about 10 or 12 in the making.
That's a lot more than when you all were in school.
Oh, yeah.
Substantially
Yeah.
more, like 3 or 4 times more. Wow.
Yeah, I think there were about 28 or
Yeah.
even less. Most states, actually, probably only half of the states back then had a veterinary school.
Mhm.
There have long been long-standing. One state had two. That's Alabama had Auburn University and Tuskegee University, which happened to
Mhm.
be right together
Mhm.
in the same general location. But now there are, I think, 6 or 7 states that have two. Arizona has two.
Mhm.
California, Texas, Tennessee, and then Alabama, and then I think there will soon be a few more that have two. Oh, New York has two.
New York,
Long
yeah.
Island University and Cornell.
So,
Yeah.
to go in to become a doctor of veterinary medicine, is it similar to human medicine? Do you come from a science undergrad and then do residency, and how does it work?
Yeah, so people coming into veterinary medicine are very similar to those going into human medical school, maybe with a few additions. One
Mhm.
is that most of our students that get admitted have a 4-year degree, but it's not a requirement. They
Mhm.
only have to fulfill certain prerequisite courses. Although in today's environment, most of them have at least a BS. Some of them are second career, and so they might even have, a farm D core a background, or they might have, some other degree. But what we look at is we know from those that get admitted to our school, out of 165, we typically have them coming from close to 100 different institutions where they did their undergraduate or some pre-veterinary
Mm.
school um,
Wow.
academic work. We also have them come from all sorts of disciplines. It's not just, zoology and animal
Mhm.
science. We have them
Right.
come out of the humanities
Yeah.
and other things, and they do have to take the prerequisite science courses, but they
Mm.
may not have a degree in that. They may have their
Mhm.
degree in a humanities or arts or something like that.
Mhm.
Once in veterinary school, with the exception of the University of Arizona school, it is a 4-year program, just like medical school. University of Arizona has a 3-year, all year long, no real
Oh.
breaks like we have in the summer.
Uh-huh.
And they just graduated their first class this past year. After 4 years, we have to have our students prepared to be
Mm.
competent, confident, and career-ready veterinarians.
Mhm.
Most graduates today go into some sort of general practice, at least as a
Mhm.
first step. We have some that go into internships, probably 25 to 30% for a
Hmm.
year, and then we have people that can go, and an internship is not required, and a
Mhm.
residency is not required. So we have an even smaller number and percentage as a profession that go into specialties and do residencies. And so in that case, it's usually a 3-year residency, and then get board certification so that they would be a specialist in something like veterinary dermatology, or in my case, equine surgery.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What's the average age of the incoming class?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask you that.
It's quite a large range, but the average is probably somewhere around 24,
Wow.
25. But we have younger and we have people in second careers.
Rusty, what I was looking at the curriculum and how it's changed since we were there. Janet, it is they so encourage counseling and mental health. It's wonderful. I was looking at some of the programs because it's so stressful. I remember, Janet, Daddy had lung
Yeah.
surgery because he had a lung
Mhm.
tumor when I was doing the surgery rotation with Dr. Burchard, and I was so afraid to go and ask Dr. Burchard, can I just go home for that day that he's having that surgery? And
Yeah.
he couldn't have been nicer. I mean, it
Yeah.
was, and that's back then when, you couldn't miss a day or two.
Mhm.
Really. I mean, it was so hard to get in, and it still is. What I was reading, of 2,600 applicants, you guys took 165. But I was so afraid to ask him, and he couldn't have been nicer. And yes, I had to make up the day I was gone. But it meant so much to me to be there in case something would have happened to him. And thank God it didn't. But yeah,
Right.
such a stressful time. Such a stressful time.
Yeah, this year, this current applicant pool, we had just under 3,000 applicants for
Oh,
135 or
wow.
165 seats, and we have extended those invitations to them, and they like all vet schools in the U.S. Those individuals have until April 15th to make their decisions of which school they're going to go into. Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
our curriculum has changed quite a bit, and not just in
Mm-hmm.
the aspects you referred to. Certain we have we're the first college to implement an outcomes or competency based curriculum that's based on the new competency based veterinary medical education framework,
Mm-hmm.
which for us means our students are getting hands-on skill training from the first week of first year all the way through,
Love it.
and it's really a much more integrated
Yeah.
approach. For example, we don't have standalone anatomy and immunology, and those are all integrated into what's called healthy animals. So
Mm-hmm.
they study the head of all species and learn about the airflow mechanics and anatomy and immunology and normal imaging, and then they move down to the neck and all that. So it's just I think it's a much more integrated
Yeah.
approach, and it's circular, or I guess spiral, meaning in year one it's mostly about healthy individual animals and healthy
Mm-hmm.
populations, along with
Mm-hmm.
many other things. But then as they go through, year two is more around disease and diagnoses. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Again, both in individual animals and populations. And then year three is in more around what are called treatment. We had a student die by suicide. And that was, even though we were providing services then, it just
Yeah.
sort of shook me to the core.
Yeah.
Which actually brings me back, mention about the dogs. I remember how I had just had them just about a year, and how much of a role they played. Just they
Mm.
almost sensed that I was going through a lot of
Yeah.
emotional turmoil, and I can remember that vividly. But so
Yeah.
since that time, we have gone from one full-time embedded counselor that we pay for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We now have two full-time embedded counselors that are on site, and since COVID, they also do a lot of their counseling virtually, which they find is more convenient for the students.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we also have a part-time psychiatrist that we hire, and it's alternated depending on who it is. But the person spends 6 hours a week at our college. Again, it can be virtual or in person, and those are specifically for our veterinary students, because I learned that it was taking 6 months
Yeah.
to get in to see a psychiatrist.
Oh,
Well, a veterinary student that can't just postpone things and
right.
or drop a course or two. I mean, and so we have it so they're readily available. But we also have financial advisors, and we have an office of peer of teaching and learning with peer tutors that are
Mm-hmm.
free. The students are students that are a year or two ahead of that class, and
Mm-hmm.
they get paid to tutor, but the people being
Oh, I
tutored
love it.
aren't having to pay for that. We really focus a lot on trying to reduce debt load. We've grown our
Yeah.
scholarships from 370,000 a year to 3.5 million. And thank you, Alice,
Love
for
it.
your help with our class scholarship and your contribution. So, yeah, we even opened a food. Actually, it's called the College of Veterinary Medicine Community Cupboard last April, because we learned that up to 15% of our students were food insecure, meaning
Yeah.
they would either skip meals or
Yeah.
go without eating for a day or more.
Yeah.
And so, just trying to create a place that people can not just survive but thrive, regardless of their
Mm-hmm.
background or their experiences or whatever they might be going through at that time.
Wow, that's great.
Do we still have contract states? Remember we had contract states back then?
Yeah, we did have contract states. I actually came on a contract
You
seat
oh, I didn't know that.
from
Huh.
West Virginia. Yeah, we had
Yeah.
them back then with New
Yeah.
Jersey and Maryland and
Nevada.
Nevada and Nebraska
Yeah.
and several others.
Yeah.
And no, we have not had a contract since 2008, when West Virginia canceled their contract, and actually they still have contracts, but not with us. Most schools do not have contracts. Some do, meaning Auburn has a contract with Kentucky. Virginia, Maryland has a contract with West Virginia. Mississippi State has one with West Virginia, but most of them do not.
Is there any favoritism towards Ohio residents? Is that okay to ask?
That's a good question.
Well, no, it's a good question. I wouldn't want to use the word favoritism. We have really, of 165 seats, we sort of have two pools. We take about half of our class from Ohio and half from out of Ohio.
Okay.
And those in-state students, residents of Ohio, do not compete against out-of-state. They compete for those in-state seats.
Inside, yeah.
Of the 3,000 applicants, we probably have less than 350 applicants from Ohio, the rest being from the other parts of the U.S. and even a few international applicants.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Because I think undergrad is different in terms of residency. I think the acceptance rate is different for undergrad. Like regular college, yeah.
And it probably depends on which college they're going into undergrad in. Is it going into a general education theme that then they decide, or are they going into business or engineering or whatever it may be?
Wow.
Did you only apply to OSU, Rusty, from when you were an undergrad?
I applied to two places. I had three options, but I only applied to two. One was Ohio State and one was University of Georgia. And I did fortunately have an opportunity to choose between the two and visited both. But the fact that I had a great uncle and a cousin go here to veterinary school probably helped influence me. Although personally, I'm a first generation college student, meaning my parents and their parents and their parents did not go to college.
Right.
But
same with us.
Same with us. I really liked the University of Cincinnati had a 5-year program where you did. I was a business major, so you would do an internship every other. I think it was once a year, a semester or a quarter. And then I was dating a gentleman that played basketball at the Ohio State University. And he was a year, the same age, but he was a year behind me in school. And I really wasn't crazy about the University of Cincinnati. And so I transferred to Ohio State and absolutely loved it and was in a sorority and completely rah-rah, didn't miss a football game and just loved it. And am still pretty involved with the alumni no matter where I've lived because it's a special group of people, that
absolutely
have that... I don't know what to call it, that fan rage.
Camaraderie. Yeah. Rusty, I have to tell you, I was so lucky because when I got into vet school, I didn't, we were going, my husband and I were both pharmacists. And so we were going down to one income. I worked every other weekend. So I went home to Cleveland, but I had no idea where I was going to live. And I couldn't really afford to get an apartment. Right. So Janet in Chi Omega, their house manager, get this, lived in Upper Arlington, Libby Reinhart.
A widow.
She was a widow. I rented a room from her 2 miles from the vet school for $100 a month. And I couldn't have done it without her. The funny part is, like, when we would come back from the trailer in Marysville or doing pigs, I would literally take my clothes off before I went in her house because I didn't want, you know how that is. And one time, and this is another funny story, one time the group of us, after we left the trailer, we had done pig medicine that day, we went into McDonald's, everybody cleared out. Everybody cleared out. I'm not kidding.
Well, it's a great way to shorten a line behind a cash register.
But you lived there. Alice, you lived with Libby, and I think one of my sorority sisters had a room too.
Yeah, a dental hygienist student.
Yes.
And you know what? And I have to tell you, Rusty, I went back at an older age. And so it was Libby, Carol, and me. Carol and I both rented a room. And I was going home on weekends working. So I'm studying literally up in this room every night. And so occasionally Carol and Libby would make dinner and they'd say, why don't you come and eat with us? Because we're kind of worried about you up there.
Yeah.
I remember one day when you were in vet school, Alice. I don't know if you remember this. I think I was working. I was in a buyer training program in Akron, and
Yeah.
you were. I was like, "What'd you do today?" And you're like, "Well, I had my arm all the way up the cow's butt, blah blah blah, feeling in there, and they were peeing." And I'm like, "Well, I checked in like 300 new garments and made a big sale." Like we, like completely opposite
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. And it's funny.
Just to clarify that she would have had a protective sleeve on her
Yes,
arm.
she did mention the protective sleeve
Right. Right.
right in there.
And it helps to ballet so that you can do that. Yes, right. I have to ask Rusty, I'm curious, how do you get to be dean? Like, was
Yeah.
there like, okay, we're looking for a dean, or did they contact you, or how did that happen?
Well, a lot of people ask me the question, did you always know you wanted to be a dean? And I said, I didn't even know what a dean was. I mean, when I came to veterinary school from West Virginia, I wanted to go home and be what I now refer to as an Appalachian version of James Harriet.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Because that's all I knew.
Yeah.
All I knew
Yeah.
was my country vet, and that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to do. But as you know, Alice, when you get to veterinary school, your eyes get opened to all sorts of career paths, and
yeah.
I changed my mind multiple times about what I wanted to do. When I graduated, I thought I wanted to do equine internal medicine, and then my girlfriend, then fiance, then wife, then ex-wife, Bonnie, she wanted to be an equine surgeon, and we went off on our to our internships.
Mm-hmm.
Her at North Carolina State and me at University of Georgia. And so we both came back the next year, and I was doing equine surgery and she was doing equine internal medicine. So we had just switched. That in 2005, I was being actually contacted by Kent Hoblet, which you probably remember, Alice.
Oh yeah, Dr.
He
Hoblet.
was he was the department chair of veterinary preventive medicine in Ohio State, and he was chairing the search committee for the department chair of veterinary clinical sciences. And I said, thank you, but I'm happy here. And I said that a few times. And finally, it was like, well, would you at least come up and give a guest lecture and, whatever. So I did. And the next thing you know, I'm now an applicant, and then then I get the offer, and then I finally decide. And so I arrive here in start November of 2006. And I served in that role for almost 8 years, along with a couple other roles at the same time. And I stepped out of the department chair role in 2014 when the current dean, Lonnie King, asked me to take on a different role, which was the executive associate dean under him. And then there was a national search, and I became an applicant, candidate, and then eventually was offered the position.
Wow.
So and people say, well, don't you miss being a veterinarian? I say, well, I am still a veterinarian. I just don't practice.
Yeah.
And I think what I realized back, I don't know that I realized it back then, but as I reflected on it, I haven't done any veterinary medicine clinically for 17 years. That why that was so fulfilling was because I was helping people. I was helping clients with their horses. I was helping students learn. I was helping, whatever. And I do that now in my role as department chair, but in just different ways.
Hey, did you know that for dogs and cats that could benefit from a prescription diet, Blue Buffalo offers natural veterinary diets formulated by animal nutritionists and veterinarians for certain dietary needs like kidney support, weight management, gastrointestinal support, and my particular favorite, dermatology. They make a food allergic diet that's an alligator based called NP or a hydrolyzed salmon based for dogs and cats called HF. Contact your veterinarian about these prescription Blue Buffalo diets.
Well, tell me about the dogs, Travis, Teddy, and Tucker.
Yes.
Yeah, so in 2014, my partner, now husband, he'd always wanted a miniature schnauzer, and he always wanted a miniature schnauzer named Travis, which I don't know why, but he did. And so being at the vet school and knowing that we had ophthalmology services, we would have litters of puppies brought in at 6 or 8 weeks of age to have their eyes checked because congenital cataracts is a heritable trait. And so multiple times there'd be puppies and I'd get pictures and, hey, do you want one? And I wasn't really looking for one. My job was keeping me pretty busy. And finally, in December of 14, I showed him some pictures and said, do you want one? And he says, you work too much and I travel too much and no, we don't have time. And so the next morning I emailed the breeder who I had happened to meet in the lobby and asked her if she would be available the next day on a Saturday for me to drive out and see these puppies. They were out in Newark, Ohio, probably 45 minutes away. And she said yes. So I went out. He didn't know it. I went out and there were 4 males left out of this litter of 6. 2 black ones and 2 sort of either salt and pepper or black and silver. And she lets them out of their individual kennels in the house because they were all in an individual crate. And the 4 males run over, and then 2 of them disappear and go out the doggy door out to the yard. The 2 black ones stayed behind. One of them was a very outgoing, a little bigger than the other one. The other one was very shy, very timid. Aww. And I sort of knew which one I connected to, which was the shy, timid one. Yeah. I knew which one he would connect to, which was more the outgoing one. So I said to her, I don't know if I don't know how this will go, but could I take 2 and bring one or both of them back? And of course she was ready to go on that. She says, yes. And here's 2 carriers and here's 2 collars and here's 2 of these. Knowing full well I wouldn't bring either of them back. So I get home on a Saturday. He's in the sunroom watching college football, and I walk in. They were about 10 pounds. They were 4.5 months old, one under each arm, and he doesn't even turn over and look at me till I get almost over there. And he sees him and he says, "What?" And I put him down on the floor. They trembled a little bit. And then I said, well, I'm going to the gym. I'll be back in a couple of hours. So when I got back, every pillow and blanket was on the floor. And this favorite stuffed animal that his twin sister had given him a long time ago that traveled with him all over the world when he was in the Army.
Oh, my God.
They were laying on that thing on the floor. So they sort of said, this cherished relic is mine. So that's how that all happened. And so then I said, how about we name him Lincoln and Luther? And he's like, I always want a dog named Travis. And I said, okay, how about Travis, Luther, and Teddy Lincoln? He said, I don't like the name Luther. I said, okay, well, how about Travis Lincoln and Teddy Luther, since Teddy's mine? And he agreed to that. So that's how they got their dog. So Teddy is Teddy Roosevelt. Luther is Martin Luther King Jr. Lincoln is Abraham Lincoln. And Travis is Travis.
Oh.
Then fast forward to, let's see, that was 2014.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2021 in the fall. Our neighbors, she tracks these shelter websites. And she saw this dog, this black 4.5-month-old black miniature schnauzer male on this website at the Ross County Humane Society in Chillicothe.
Oh, boy.
And she texted him and me at the same time, but not on the same text. And I was working from home that day, and he was in the other room. And so I went out to the living room, and I looked down at Teddy and Travis, and I said, Teddy and Travis, would you like another little black brother? And from the other room, he yelled, 2's enough. So I proceeded back to my office here in the house, closed the door, and called the Humane Society. And I didn't tell them who I was. I just said, I'm calling in reference to the black miniature schnauzer. Can you tell me about it? So they said, well, he was brought here. He was purchased from a breeder. And the couple's dog, their older dog, a Maltese, never got used to and got comfortable around the puppy. If you've never done this, I think you have to go through more than adopting children.
You do.
Oh, yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
So I fill out this extensive report, and one of them was, well, what would you do if your dog develops a behavioral problem? I said, well, they go to veterinarians who practice low stress handling, and they know about behavior. And if not, we have behavioral medicine specialists right here, And anyway, I had to answer all these. So within less than 10 minutes after submitting that online, that lady calls me back and she said, I didn't know that's who you were, because you have to put down your name and what you do.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I didn't think that was relevant. I just was inquiring. So she said, there's a very long list of people who want this puppy, but you just moved to the top of the list.
Oh.
So all three of my dogs, everybody who knows them and knows us, says that they all hit the puppy lotto.
Yep.
Or the jackpot.
That's for sure.
That's so now we're all one big happy family.
Did Travis and Teddy take to him right away? How'd that work out?
No.
Awful.
Really?
No. I actually, what I did was I took Tucker over to my other neighbor's yard, and I was then going to take one dog at a time.
Yeah.
Over.
Oh, yeah. Good. Yeah.
The problem was I failed here because I let them both out into the backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I took Travis, who I knew would be better, and he was, but he still was not good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided, well, this is a disaster. I'm going to start this over.
Yeah.
Teddy attacked him. Now, Teddy only had 4 teeth, but they were his canines, so that was probably important.
Okay.
So finally I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. So I put Teddy and Travis in their kennels, which are wire open like kennels.
Yeah.
And I put Tucker's similar kennel between them, but they were all in separate kennels. And I let them acclimate like that for a while.
Okay.
Oh, that was smart. Yeah.
Eventually, and now they sleep in a pile together on my bed at night. So they're inseparable now.
Do you feed them all low-fat food because of them being schnauzers? I was curious.
I feed them. We're very regimented in what we feed them in terms of the amount.
Okay.
Teddy and Travis are on, I forget which brand, but it's part of it is Teddy has nephrotic syndrome, and so he's got to be on a low protein diet.
Okay.
And Travis doesn't have that, but we decided to feed him the same thing, and it actually their body condition score, I would say, is ideal.
Okay, that's great.
Tucker, I feed something else, but I'm always worried about pancreatitis and all those other things. But the 2 older ones both have mitral valve disease of their heart, not progressed to the point that they need treated. They do get ultrasounds of their heart every 6 months. Then Tucker just developed. This would be right up your alley, Alice.
It is. I read about it. Yes.
He developed 2 things. He developed something started last October where his hair was thinning, and I actually took him in to our GP, which is at Ohio State, but it was just starting, and so they didn't make much of it. They did some tests, nothing was out of the ordinary, but then it just kept progressing, and then in December he started developing what I think was folliculitis down his dorsum of his back and so they prescribed a shampoo and they prescribed some topical for that, and that sort of got somewhat better initially, and then I noticed he was really losing his hair along his flanks and his chest. And Alice knows all this, but I sort of read up on him, sort of thought I knew maybe what was going on, but never want to be the daddy doctor who treats your own dogs.
And the dean.
The dean is Dr. Google, right?
Right.
So I decided to take him into our GP because I wanted to give the students, the 4th-year students who serve as the doctors in that clinic, with oversight from, I wanted them to work this dog up and have that experience.
Yeah.
That was on
Yeah.
a Thursday, but I did have a derm appointment scheduled the next day because I wanted. And so anyway, he was diagnosed with seasonal flank alopecia, which means seasonally he loses his hair primarily in his flanks and up onto his chest, but even on his underbelly. And then he had that folliculitis. I'm happy to report that after 2 weeks of antibiotics and the continued topical therapy, shampoo, and it's more of a mousse now. It used to be a pour-on sort of thing. But also receiving melatonin and 3 or 4 sessions with phototherapy.
Yeah.
His hair is coming back in.
Yeah. I know, when I saw that report that you put on Facebook, I saw a lot of it in Northern Ohio because we don't get as much sun because of lake effect as you get in Columbus. So I thought, wow, that's really something. And then I was trying to think if I had ever seen one in a schnauzer, and I did. I had a giant schnauzer that didn't have flank, but bilateral ears, totally symmetrical and facial. And it was light responsive alopecia. Yeah. And sometimes it skips a year before it gets better. And Janet, what that is lack of sunlight, like our seasonal affective disorder.
Oh.
That's why I come here, because I need light. Yeah.
It doesn't happen in California or Florida.
No, it doesn't. No.
Well, it could. I don't know. I mean, basically, it's seasonal because the length of daylight changes, and so I don't know. I'm not an expert on this, but I would imagine it probably is more of a problem in places where days are shorter in general, or there's a dramatic change in the amount of sunlight.
I remember having an ER vet come in with his boxer, and they worked all night, slept all day. And that was one of the worst cases I had seen. That boxer, it worked its way flank up to the saddle area.
Oh.
Yeah. As a dermatologist, I was always surprised. People are very bothered by that, and I would tell them, look, there are very few derm diseases where they lose their hair and die because of it, so calm down. We'll get to the bottom of it. Yeah.
Well, I will say, Alice, in your practice, some of your patients were not the most attractive. No offense.
What does that
Well,
mean?
like I've been, because a lot
no
of them
hair.
didn't have hair. They had like sores and rashes.
They were all beautiful. Yeah.
They were.
Well, the good news about, again, to that point, Tucker, it wasn't yucky looking, and it wasn't really, something that I felt like, ooh, I don't want to touch that.
Right. You need to spend a day with me.
Dr.
Touch
Pimple
or
Popper.
smell.
I don't know that Tucker felt a shame or anything and was afraid to go outside. But maybe.
Rusty, it could have entailed a whole new doggy wardrobe.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Well, I will tell you, so I'm writing this book, and one of the books is on humanization of pets. So attributing human characteristics to pets.
Oh.
And so this book covers history, science, data, but also has stories interwoven through it. And so the stories in that chapter, actually the 3 dogs wrote about how their experiences of me humanizing them.
I know.
And so just a couple of examples, not word for word verbatim, but can you believe Dad makes us go get our haircut every 3 weeks, whether we need it or not? And he doesn't even give us a chance to say how we want to wear our hair. It's always the same thing. But we remember him. We saw pictures of him back when he was in the 1970s. He had a shag, a bowl cut, a this cut, a that cut. We don't get any of that opportunity to experience that.
And they have to withstand all these photo shoots.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. The other one is they said we can't even nap or get a good night's sleep because the camera flash is going off constantly, no matter what we're doing.
I love it. I feel like I'm their godmother. Every time I see them, because we have that cute picture that you sent us with the Buckeye scarves, they're good posers. How can I say? They are. I don't know. I don't think they're trying. They're just very photogenic.
They're very driven by treats. Would you like to see Tucker? Because he's knocking at my
Oh,
office
we'd
door.
I
love to.
It would
Can
be
you
our
can,
honor. We'd
Pet
love to
can
see.
you
appearance.
can you hear that noise?
No.
Well,
Wait.
he was
No.
Just a second. I'll be right
All
back.
right.
Oh, what a beauty. Hi, handsome.
Hi, little man. Hi, Tucker. Hi.
What you think? Huh?
Oh
Hi,
my
Tucker.
gosh, he's darling.
Where are the treats? Tucker, where's your treat?
That's
Oh,
what he's asking because it's 4:00 and that's normally
Yeah.
when
Yep.
they eat dinner. So
Yes.
Oh,
they let me know.
Thank you,
Very-
Rusty. I catch a lot of heat for asking Mike, did you give the dogs dinner? It's only 4:00. I'm like, Janet, remember when Daddy came home from work at 4:00? That's when we would eat dinner.
we ate
Yeah.
early. Well, Rusty, we ask every guest this question. What is your pet or human peeve?
Well, I thought about this because
Okay.
Alice gave me so I don't know that I have any true pet peeves. I have a couple. Like if I'm hearing somebody lecture, a researcher at a meeting, and they say me or I or my lab, that bothers me because
Yeah.
to me it should be we, our
Mhm.
lab, our team.
Yeah.
So that's a pet peeve. I was thinking though from the boys' perspectives and some of their human peeves about me, and that is they don't like it much when I am not feeding them on time,
Right? Like this.
which is oftentimes regular.
Or are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah.
It's
Or when somehow we run out of treats. So therefore I switch it up and try to give them something else, which isn't maybe what they wanted.
right.
Although I don't think they can blame me for this, but I guess they can, particularly when the time changes in the fall.
Oh,
Yeah.
And 4:00 now is really 5:00.
Yep.
They are wondering why they're not eating at 3:00.
This is going to be a good book. I can't wait till that comes
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Well, I have a Buckeye confession to make. So we
What?
got Libby, Alice got us Libby, a rescue golden, and I'm the one taking the puppy to the vet for her first appointment, here. And they said, what's her name? And I said, Libby. And then I'm standing there and I'm like, Libby of Buckeye. Because I thought it sounded like Libby of Manchester. And so I came home, my husband is not a Buckeye. And he's like,
Yeah.
I'm changing it. I'm like, I got stuck going to the vet. It's sticking. So her official name is Libby of Buckeye Kings.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we should let him go and get those treats.
It's
It's
time.
like 4:07. No wonder he was at the door.
They know.
Anyway.
The other thing they do, and that I don't know if it's a human peeve of theirs, but every Wednesday at 12 noon,
Yeah.
they start howling in unison when the tornado siren is tested.
Oh.
And they all three sort
Forgot
of
about
get
that.
together like this, and they're looking up and howling in unison.
Oh my gosh.
They must think it's like their master calling them or something, right?
Yeah. I sometimes I think they want me to start howling with them, but I haven't done it yet.
I love how they can be still so primal, even though they're domesticated. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we have a fire horn because our firefighters are all volunteer, and it goes every night. It's supposed to go off at 6, but we laugh because it's like 6:05, 6:09. Like, hey Bob, did you hit the button? Like, They forget. But the dog, it doesn't bother her at all, and it's loud.
Yeah.
It's loud. That's
Hey,
funny.
Rusty, I don't know if you saw, but yesterday, Annie, my one rescue, was
Oh.
growling outside the window, and there was an alligator behind our pool, behind the fenced-in area, a 7-footer. And I have to tell you, she'll see birds out there waiting and stuff. And when she growled, I was like, "What's that about?" It was 7:30 in the morning, and I got up and looked, and at first, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
The only thing I saw was movement of the front leg and the back leg. And then I zeroed in because it blends right in. There's palm trees, and
Yeah.
there's still trees down from the hurricane. I mean, this
Yeah.
island is going to take 5-6 years. But yes, it was a 7-footer, and it crawled. Well, it crawled, I guess, toward the neighbors, because the neighbor 3 doors down said it was in their yard 2 days ago. So
I called
now
Alice. I called Alice
What?
last night, and I'm like, I'm calling for alligator.
yeah, Janet, should we do an OH?
We should do an OH as a goodbye.
For close?
Rusty, thank you. It's
Rusty,
been a
you
pleasure.
started. Okay, count it down, Rusty.
On 3. 1,
Okay.
2,
Two,
3.
three.
O,
O,
H,
H,
I,
I,
O.
O.
Go Bucks!
Thank
Yay!
you. Bye.
Thank you, Rusty. Love ya.
Love
Thanks
you
so
too.
much.
Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for tuning in today. We hope you found the science-based information provided helpful in taking care of your pet. Check out our other Speaking of Pets episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
We'd love to hear from you. So email your pet photos and/or pet peeves to contact@speakingofpetspod.com. Remember to follow Speaking of Pets on all social media.